Alrighty, here we are, guys. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Combat Gym Unlocks. Your host is always Clinton Tudor, and today we have an incredible guest with us today. Signing on, we have Artem Sharoshkin, who's actually fighting for the American dream right now. He's from Russia, and after arriving in America, barely speaking, a scrap of English, he signed on at the boxing club in San Diego, California, in Muay Thai, taking on a job as a cleaner just so he could get more time in the gym to level up on his passion. Now, fast forward a bit, and Artem found himself, fighting regularly on the scene and also going overseas to compete and representing Russia and America. He even fought at the, original Lumpini Stadium in Thailand. So it's really all about humble beginnings and then developing a really unique niche when presented with an amazing opportunity to, become a partner in the boxing club. So he's carved out a really special niche in the marketplace, and he is the CEO of the boxing club. Please welcome to the show, Artem Sharoshkin. Here he is. Artem, how are you, my friend?
How are you, my friend? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I'm super pumped, bro. I know you're a really busy guy, and taking some time out like this, it's really, really humbling. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
How's things in San Diego right now, where you're from?
How are things? We are open. We are operating, and so we definitely hope to not go back to what we went through last year. So far, so good. But of course, California being a pretty liberal state, there's always that chance of additional restrictions coming in. So we'll see.
100%, man. Look, in New Zealand, where I'm from, it's really important to understand our roots. And I really want to understand where you're from. Tell me a little bit about growing up. Like you grew up in a small town in Russia in the 90s, am I right?
Yes. So all the stories you hear about Russia in the 90s are true.
Okay.
Very small town, and in the 90s, as I'm sure you know, after the fall of the USSR, it was a little bit of a Wild West. And I was lucky, or maybe unlucky, to grow up at those times to where it was pretty wild, and I've seen quite a few things, which ultimately I think kind of shaped me to be the person that I am today.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you moved out from Russia in your teens, right? You just sort of come out to the States in your teens.
Yeah, my sister moved to United States first. She's 10 years older, and she moved here, and I was lucky enough to come visit her when I was 16 years old for her wedding, and I ended up actually walking her out because my dad didn't get a visa. And
Okay.
I stayed for a month or so, and after that, I basically knew I had to come back. It was quite a stark difference going from small town in Russia to Irvine, California, which is a really nice place in Orange County. So I knew I had to come back. So I came back after finishing school there. I came back when I was 18 years old.
Man, that's crazy. So here you are, 18, kicking it in the States, and like, what's up with this calling to Muay Thai, and what's up with this calling to the boxing club in San Diego? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I tried out boxing in Russia when I was in my teens again, and in Russia, especially at that time, if you are training combat sports, you're doing it for real. You're doing it to compete professionally one day. So no one takes it easy. So I went to the gym, got my butt kicked in the first day. They literally just threw me in sparring, almost as if to discourage you from participating. And that's exactly what happened. I'm like, yeah, I'm not looking to get knocked out every day. And that was the end of my career then. Moving to United States, my first job was detailing cars with a couple of Mexican kids. Didn't speak a word of English, nor did they. So it was, a lot of hand gestures. And there was a gym across the street called the Boxing Club, and it's been around actually in San Diego since 1999. And
Nice.
tiny hole in the wall gym, maybe 3,500 square feet. And I saw this gym, and I wanted to participate or join the gym, but never just didn't get a chance to. And my sister but I kept talking about it, and my sister finally surprised me for my birthday with a 1 month membership. She said, "Listen, you stop talking about it, just go and try it out." And at that time, again, I didn't have any formal training. I was smoking like a pack of cigarettes a day, and I ended up joining it just for fitness. Really just for fitness. I was taking kind of fitness boxing classes, so there's no contact. It's all bag work
Yeah.
classes, and that's how it all started.
But just fully fell in love with it. Just got enveloped with the passion of Muay Thai. You really stuck at it, right? You really threw yourself into it.
I saw Muay Thai on National Geographic, and it was I think one of those most brutal combat sports one of the most brutal sports in the world. And I saw that, I was like, I want to do that. And that's kind of what got me really excited about it. And then the irony of the whole story is that one of the guys who was on National Geographic, Mel Minor, who is very well known for breaking baseball bats with his shin, was the head coach at that location.
No
And
way.
he's great friends. Yeah, and he's great friends with number of combat sports practitioners. He fought Masato in Japan. He trained with John Wayne Parr. So I was just really lucky to find this place that happened to have a multi-world champion coaching there for Muay Thai.
You're lucky, man. I mean, like I think
Yeah.
about it now, with all of these gyms sort of popping up everywhere, almost like 7-Elevens, because it's very popular to be a fighter, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of thinking, I was really lucky to walk into a gym that was authentic, that I got really looked after by a great coach who would, never take risks. And really, it's all about getting the basics right and taking your time, not rushing into anything. And I think about people now that, might want to sort of pick it up, and they're either going to get served an ad about a place that's kind of like training-ish, not really, or they may end up in a place that's not really right for them. And so, you're coming from that older school. I'm really glad that there are still fight gyms like that around.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially at that time. And you're absolutely right. It's changing. But at that time, yeah, that was a great discovery for me. And that was quite literally a fight gym with some fitness classes there. And in fact, initially when I was taking these fitness classes and I inquired about jumping into Muay Thai class, the coach just looked at me on the bag work and he said, "You're not ready." And I tried for the second time and he said, "Hey, you're not ready." And then finally I had to, get some personal training sessions so he could kind of expedite my learning and get me into kind of that Muay Thai class, and kind of took off ever since.
I love that, man. You really found your feet and you found your passion and started wrapping some identity and community around you. And that really pushed you forward, right? So, in such a short amount of time, you've obviously taken that passion and leveled up because, 20 years age and sort of 2021, starting to travel, making a name for yourself in San Diego area, but also starting to travel out and having, 20 odd fights to your name by that stage. I mean, you're busier than Israel Adesanya, man. What's going on?
I'll take that as a compliment. Yeah, well, I caught a perfect time because it was kind of a great age in California for fights. So we had a lot of, at that time, they were called smoker fights in the gyms, to where quite literally just hop in the car, drive to a gym that will host fights on Saturday night. And you show up, they weigh you in, and if they have somebody around that weight class, you can go ahead and compete. So it was a very informal, and that allowed you to get quite a lot of fights in a matter of months. And in fact, I remember a story of going with Terry Sokoju, who was my teammate at that time. He was not known, and obviously people know him from his flash knockouts in Pride of Nogueira and Arona, and then eventually transferring to UFC. But before that, it was just me and him. He was, I think, 19 years old. I was 18, and we would jump in the car and drive to LA and show up and hopefully try to get some fights. Obviously, I would usually get fights, and no one wanted to fight Terry because he's, a guy from Cameroon, 240 pounds with like 3% body fat. But those that did, they kind of paid the price. So yeah, we got a lot of fights at that time. And then once I got to a sanctioned amateur level, so those are actually sanctioned fights, again, amazing group of people that I came up around the same time. You had Joe Schilling just starting in amateurs. You had Kevin Ross just starting in amateurs. Wow. You had Romy Adanza. You had Michael Manenko, Denny Steele, such great names. So California at that time was the only place where you could get experience in United States. So again, was incredibly lucky to do that. And Dennis Warner was the promoter here in United States that kind of really pushed that. And now we see kind of different promotions coming through, but generally vast majority of these fighters, they all came from kind of the Dennis Warner era.
Wow, it's amazing. That's amazing. It's kind of like in New Zealand, it all comes down to one man, Sifu Philip Lam, who was doing more in the Kung Fu side of things, but then introduced the Muay Thai because he realized just how devastation it was, and the fighters started traveling over. That's the whole Balmoral Liga legacy, which paves way to Eugene Behrman, which paves way to the CKB boys. But, there's a whole legacy from 1975 that started that way. So it sounds like you moved into very fertile ground. You've fought and you've traveled around. Like, talk to me about some of the most memorable fights that you've had in that short amount of time. So many fights.
Yeah, I've had quite a few. And again, it was a very kind of fast paced, going from, quite literally fitness classes with, moms to, competing overseas. And I guess one memorable fight was I just turned 20 years old and I was still an amateur. And coach told me, hey, I think we're going to fly to Japan and fight in Tokyo. And would you like the opportunity? And it's going to be a sponsored trip. And I said, why not? Let's go. And I ended up fighting a fighter with, 50 something fights. That is a K1 veteran. And it was shocking, just that transition. But I was like, so young and hungry, great opportunity. Let's go and let's do it. And yeah, it was incredible, fighting overseas in Japan and Tokyo, right next to Tokyo Dome Hotel, and amazing show. And I think it's called Ihara Promotion and Heroes. And yeah.
I love it, man. That's so cool. What a memorable opportunity to have. Like, that's so cool. So being a fighter, and transitioning, like, do you think that kind of helps with business? Do you think, like, is that something that really works for you, having that fighter's background?
I get asked that a lot because obviously I don't have any business background. I don't have a degree, I have high school education. So I definitely think there is something to it, right? So the perseverance side, and not just the fighting. I think if you've been successful at fighting, that can kind of transition over, because to be successful in fighting, you have to be very accepting of criticism. You have to be willing to learn. You have to go back to the basics, right? If you want to be generally a good fighter, you have to have great fundamentals. So these are all the same qualities that I took into business. The perseverance side, I mean, you're getting slapped around quite a lot in business, especially if we're talking recent years. So that perseverance piece has to be there, but also, just the team, right? Any fighter that we know that has been incredibly successful, generally there's a fantastic team of coaches that are behind them, and I think without a doubt, that's the number one reason for the boxing club success is the team that we're able to assemble.
Yeah, I mean, and building a business is all about team, right? From the top down, like everybody coming together, working on having the same passion, having the same vision, walking towards the same goals, reminding themselves of the values every day, and sort of heading towards that. You've done some like super impressive things with the business, but obviously there's something that happened there with the fighting. You had to take an early retirement and take a good hard look and start thinking about what am I going to do, and having some of those decisions to be made. Like, talk to me about that tough time and what led to that decision.
Yeah, always had a vision of probably doing something of my own, as I would imagine a lot of other fighters do. Didn't think it was going to happen that fast. So in my late 20s, I think I was 27, I ended up taking a fight in Lumpini Stadium, just a really unfortunate knockout. And I was fine after the knockout, but shortly after there was some side effects of the knockout, and I had some severe symptoms, the typical like numbness and slurred speech and memory loss and vision loss. So it was pretty scary, and I had to pause for some time and not train. And during that pause, I kind of started thinking more about, hey, if this is potentially permanent, what are you going to be doing? And that's when I started thinking more about the business side of things. And I've been coaching my whole life. So since I joined the boxing club as a member, then I became a janitor. They offered me a position as a janitor, then eventually coaching position, covering a couple of classes. And that's kind of slowly, it transitioned into director of training role at that time that I had. So they were very understanding of my fight schedule as well. So at that point, I had two choices to make. One was to leave the company that I love so much and start something on my own, or potentially stay in the company and approach at that time ownership of the company and see if there's a partnership to be made. So
that's an interesting proposition, right?
Yeah.
Like, but everyone, when they're a fighter, and they have their identity wrapped up into fighting, it's what they do. That's how they define themselves. And then you having this accident and having to be forced to take a look at like an early retirement when you're kind of in your prime, it's a very difficult decision to make, right? Like, so there would have been a lot of things going through your mind at that time. Like, some people get, they get an injury and it's the doc says that's it. You cannot fight again because you're risking your life. Like, that's it. But that wasn't quite the case with you, right? You had to kind of work through this decision because it wasn't a life-threatening scenario. It was kind of more symptoms that were challenging.
Yeah. So I tried to come back, and after a period of time, I went back to training and sparring and competing, and some of the symptoms, so I felt better, and some of the symptoms came back after sparring. So that again kind of made me rethink, hey, is that something that you want to take chances in? But I'll be honest with you, and Nick Diaz actually just talked about this in his interview before the fight. At that point, I didn't have the fire anymore to fight. So after this incident happened, I didn't really feel that fire. So I was still, very much interested in the sport, love the sport, but there's something different when you have that fire and when you don't. And I know for a fact, if I was to continue competing and let's say roll into my 30s, I'm fighting guys that are in their early 20s, if not teens, that are hungry. They're working their butts off. making sure that when they step in that ring, hey, I'm going to go through anything you throw at me because I'm so passionate about the sport. Versus with me, once you start having thoughts of like, this is going to be a lot of hard work. What am I doing this for? And all these things, once you start having this conversation, it's probably not a good time for you to go in the ring. And that's kind of what happened. It made me rethink in general terms of like, hey, is that something that you want to continue doing? And then over time, a number of fighters and coaches been kind of fighting for me to come back into combat sports. Kevin Ross being definitely one of them. I think at one point he was like sending me monthly reminders like, hey, when are you going to get back? Do a combat fight. So we always joke about this. But in retrospect, there's some fighters that regret retiring early and they wish they continued on. I'm very kind of happy and not regretful at all of kind of how everything played out, because the opportunity was great for me to become part of the business that quite literally changed my life. And it wouldn't be possible if I continued fighting. So
yeah, no, I love that. I mean, by that stage, just so I get a sense of the timeline, with the fighting, what are we looking at? 10 years that you've been with the boxing club family?
10 plus years. Yeah.
10 plus years at that stage. So, you go from being, one of the bros, really, right? You're kind of one of the boys. You're one of the bros, like on the floor, helping out, doing things every day, like on the tools. And then all of a sudden you go into this kind of position of like, hey, look, this is a leadership scenario. I've got strategy. I want to roll things out. How do the bros and how does the team take that? Like, how do you transition from,
That was a really, really interesting, to say the least, time, because you're absolutely right. We were teammates. We were training partners. The coaches that now technically are working for me were my coaches. So there's definitely a balancing act. And there were some challenges there. And I didn't know how to be a business owner at that time. So I had to learn and figure it out for myself as well. So there were some difficult decisions to be made. And then in some instances, my old friends or teammates where we had to have tough conversations down to, letting go of some of my friends that worked with me at that time.
Yeah, that would have been very, very, very difficult, man. That would have been tough. Like, you've joined the business when I've done the research, and you joined the business when it was really underperforming, and they were, your backs were against the wall, really, financially. It wasn't performing at all. It seems like it grew too big too fast, kind of lost culture. It wasn't the gym that you started out with across the road from the detailing shop, 2014. You really had to get in there and be energetic and innovative and really turn things around, right? So it wasn't making the decision to jump into a business that's losing money is not an easy one. Most people would just go, you know what, I'm just going to start something fresh. I'm going to start something on my own. But you didn't do that. And I'm assuming that's because you were part of the family. You were part of the team from, your beginnings, and it had such a big influence on you. But that would have been tough. That would have been really tough. Talk to me about some of the things that you really had to do. I want to know specifics here because, in my home country in New Zealand and in our neighboring country in Aussie, we've suffered, 2020, man, 2021 hasn't even been any easier. Just, it's been tough. Like, we've had closures after closures after closures. All the fight gyms that I know, that I work with, that I hang out with, that are friends of mine, we need to be really innovative right now. We don't have marketing budgets to speak of. So, 2014, you were quite scrappy. You were almost in sort of Street Fighter startup phase. Talk to me about some of those tactics that you were deploying that were really starting to turn things around. What was going on for you, man?
Yeah, and for context, so the boxing club, the original club that I joined when I was 18 years old, the company at that point was acquired. We're talking back 2005. The company was acquired by this CEO that had a vision of expanding combat sports through fitness. And we're talking way before UFC gyms as fitness or any combat sports brand you can think of. So he was really innovative at that time. And he really had the vision of kind of bringing fitness into boxing and Muay Thai. They scaled, to your point, very quickly to 5 locations. And we're talking massive clubs, 15, 20,000 square feet. the company was mismanaged. The gentleman who was running the company had no business in running combat sports, and he didn't have a passion behind it. This was just something that he thought that there's a commercial angle for it. And he was actually right. But the passion was not there. He was not really believing in the team, which I do. And one by one, the clubs started closing down. And finally, he was forced to file bankruptcy. I stayed a coach throughout this whole experience. And it was quite painful for me to see that, because here we are the #1 combat sports brand in San Diego, California, arguably nationwide, and one by one clubs are closing down. In fact, we came to close doors to one of the locations with no notice, nothing. And obviously members that become part of our family, and it was pretty heartbreaking experience. So at that time, my business partner, we had a conversation, and before I even became partner, he was my sponsor who ultimately took me to my fight in Japan. He ended up purchasing the club out of the bankruptcy court, and that's that one location that we're talking about now. To your point, in 2014, I said, listen, you have no business in managing a club. He's a car guy, he's a car collector and car salesman. So why don't you let me run the clubs? Again, that's before we even became partners, because I think I have a general idea of what we need to do. We lost sight of what the boxing club is, and I think I can help and turn the company around. So we talked about this in 13, and then in 2014, finally, when opportunity came about, I said, listen, let's become partners on this, and I think I can take it home, through just generally working from janitorial position through coaching to director of training. I'm like, I think I know what needs to be done. And I took a club that was quite literally in shambles. There was no staff morale, and we were barely paying rent, barely covering some basic payrolls. There were instances where there was absolutely no marketing budget, so it was all like guerrilla marketing. There were instances where hot water heater would break, and rather than fixing it, which is like $5,000, we ended up getting creative and writing what are the benefits of the cold showers and posting that on.
Nice.
So until we can afford replacing that hot water heater. So there's been a lot of that. In fact, most of what I know has been that, and until we kind of got our lucky break. But the biggest difference that I think we made was getting on board the right people that believed in the brand, believed in the vision of the brand at that time, and that kind of were passionate about it. Because ultimately, fitness, combat sports, people don't join it just for the paycheck. They join it because they're truly passionate about it, and they'll go above and beyond, especially if they believe in you, believe in your leadership. That is really kind of what redefined the boxing club. And we had an opportunity of rebranding, to your point, and changing the name. But since the boxing club is what the club that I joined, the club that changed my life, we decided to keep that brand, which was a tarnished name at that time, in San Diego, and turn it around and obviously turn it into a profitable company.
Yeah, I mean, it had all that legacy, right? Like, would you say 2009? 2019, it had all that legacy behind it, and you sort of jumped in there. You had those 10 years being with it, so you were really part of the culture. They allowed you to have an identity as a fighter. They allowed you to experiment. So you had the ear of the people around you, and you had that confidence with people. I mean, you strike me as a likable kind of guy who listens to people more than he speaks, and so that's probably going to lend itself well to you to be in a position to do that. Outside of saving a few dollars here and there with a few things that didn't need to be done, can you talk to me about some specific tactics that you started to deploy, like any sort of activations or ways to bring in the culture or sort of expand the brand outwards? Because, the business does need new members. It does need members to stick around, and it needs paying members. So what were some of the tactics that you deployed at that time that might bring benefit to my coaches that are listening right now?
Yeah. And some of the tactics that I think we used maybe will not be applicable to some of the people that are listening in. But here's what we did. I think first and foremost, I had to identify who we are. Like, what is the boxing club? What is the ultimate goal? Are we a fight gym? Are we a fitness gym? Or we are a combination of both? And from the start, I had a vision of creating a unique model to where it's a combination of both, meaning we did have incredible fighters, but at the same time, you can have anybody from the street walk in to where they have absolutely no interest in fighting, but they want to learn combat sports. And that was the first step for us identifying that this is who we are. And then from that point, we had to dissect and figure out, okay, so who are ultimately our target demographic, who our customers are, and how are we going to go after them effectively? Obviously, this is before targeted social media ads. This is still era of kind of guerrilla marketing. And we were doing a lot of that, a lot of activations, a lot of free workouts in the parks for the community. And really kind of, again, making it very friendly, because naturally combat sports are intimidating. And generally, people are incredibly intimidated of stepping their foot into, fill in the name boxing gym, because, or Muay Thai gym, because, they're afraid that they're going to get hurt, or there's just going to be intimidating atmosphere. So through just basic branding and marketing, we started kind of sending kind of subliminal messages that, hey, this is a very friendly, not intimidating, kind of almost cool environment that you want to be a part of. You're part of a cool club. It's not a fight club. And at the same time, our fitness members that were joining us just for workouts, they were working out side by side with some combat sports professionals that were getting ready for a big fight, or they might see them in the UFC. And it created such a unique environment to where, they still knew, even though that they're joining this club for fitness, they're getting instruction from some really high caliber instructors. And then, of course, we started doing seminars. We did multiple seminars with Kevin Ross, UFC fighters, jiu-jitsu seminars. I brought over from overseas Artem Levin, who at that time was a Glory champion. So we really kind of walked that fine line of, quality combat sports practitioners, but then still being very much open to the public.
To my hair, like right now, well, 2020 especially, like you, and it's definitely, TBC is definitely something that was worth fighting for, right? Like it built something so incredible from the turmoils of 2014 up into 2020. Like things are looking pretty good. COVID hit, and it's very difficult in the California state, Nevada state, and you guys had some challenges in there. You banded together with a few other fitness professionals and actually took them to task. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah. It's been, to your point, it's incredibly challenging year, and I think no one was ready for that. I was not in agreement with some of the restrictions that were implemented here in California being one of the strictest states. At that time, we went from one club to, in 2018, we built state-of-the-art facility in downtown San Diego in a high-rise. So the company was doing well. Then we acquired another location. So at that time, we were 3 clubs, and, in 2020, we had ambitious plans of growing and expanding to multiple more locations, including Las Vegas. And, after 2020 hit, and initially we heard that, this was going to be for a couple of weeks, a shutdown. I mean, what are you going to do? Everyone was doing it. And we didn't have a lot of information about COVID. So, we were told that you're putting people at risk. So, and of course, I wouldn't want to take that burden. So we closed all of our locations. That turned into months. And then finally we got reopened summertime. And then I believe it was a month that we stayed open. We got shut down again. And up and down, as I told you before, I think 5 times we've been opened and closed. And what people don't realize, what's incredibly hard about that, you're letting your team go, their whole team. So we had to furlough 86 employees in our company, and vast majority of them have been with us for years, and they have families. And we had to pay for their groceries because, at that time, California was not ready to give them unemployment. We had to pay their rent and car bills and so on and so forth. So incredibly challenging time. Then we're letting our team know, hey guys, it looks like restrictions are lifting. You can come back, and we're bringing back to work, and everyone is excited, and we're ready to rock and roll because they're all passionate individuals about the boxing club and just what we're doing. And then a month later, I'm letting them, sorry guys, have to let you go again because we're shut down again. And obviously, us as a company, we can't possibly swing of paying salaries while we're not open and not operating, obviously not charging our members. Frustrated members, frustrated employees, incredibly challenging time. And by the last few shutdowns, I said enough is enough. And we ended up staying open because at that time, California said, okay, you guys can reopen, but you can only stay outdoors. And I just said, this is absolutely ridiculous. And obviously in United States, they have sheriffs and police department here that were enforcing these laws. Some of them quite openly saying that I'm not enjoying what I'm doing right now, but I have to do it because this is part of my job at this moment. And they look me in the eyes and they're like, I feel bad, dude. I feel bad doing this, but I have to do it. And so they gave us some fines and some misdemeanors. But I told them, I'm like, guys, you're going to come back and we're still going to stay open because I strongly disagree with restrictions for the gyms. And at that time, now we already had science behind it, which was 0.03% chance of transmission of COVID at that time.
This is with,
at the time when we're still not having conversation of the importance of personal fitness. The irony of closing gyms, the one thing that people should be really focusing right now, especially in the United States, there's a reason why we have such mortality rates here. And it's, a large amount of people that are not eating healthy, not living healthy lifestyles, and they're out of shape, It got so frustrating. So I got involved in local government with the local mayor and local representatives. I was very vocal on social media, and we ended up rallying a lot of support and held a few successful protests, ultimately saying that this is it. We're not going to be shutting down again. Luckily, at that, numbers started to look better, and they lifted some of the restrictions in California, but challenging time nevertheless. But when we had to weigh in, are we staying shut down and potentially not reopening ever again? Or are we going to go ahead and open, especially now that we know that the signs of us putting people at risk is zero? We're going to go ahead and open. So
even though you're running the risk of getting arrested, fines.
At that time, it didn't matter. Listen, at that time, we had, again, my team, my coaches, my janitorial staff, they're all family. They're all family. And at that time, they're kind of looking at me, Artem, this is a moment of leadership. Which way are we going to go? And all of the staff behind it, it's not like, I was going to pushing for opening, but they were against it. They were the ones pushing to open because obviously at this point, they saw how absolutely ridiculous this was. And so more importantly, I did it for them. I think it was really important for me to open doors because, again, quite a few of them were not collecting unemployment here in California. So they literally had no income.
Yeah. I get it, man. I completely can empathize with your situation. It's harrowing and similar to, Dan's scenario of getting himself ready to get over to fight, the latest UFC 266 and, having the police ramming down his door and, changes in the wording of what's allowed and what's not allowed, and not having his teammates around him, and getting, kicked out of his own gym, getting kicked out of CKB, being harassed at home. Very, very challenging times for the boys to get ready,
It's crazy. So it's one of those moments where, people are catching on, and we allowed for governments to take on a lot of power and unfortunately, historically, we have seen that power is very toxic and addicting. So once people get a taste of that power, they tend to use it and abuse it. And that's the scary part. And we see it globally. We don't see it just in the United States or New Zealand. It's everywhere. It's Russia, it's Europe. But it looks like people are finally waking up to it. And I'm hoping that, governments are going to come to senses. The only way they're going to do that is if more people are going to start speaking up.
Have you taken the jab? Artem?
No.
Will you?
I will not, just out of the principle. It has nothing to do with me thinking that there's some mass conspiracy. It has nothing to do with even thinking that, the likelihood of some side effects is very, very low. I just not going to do something that I don't have to do. It's, you can't force me to do it just out of the spite, just because you're saying you're forcing me to do something, by the way, that has zero benefits at this point. If you told me that this is something that you had to do, and by the way, all of your staff have to do in order to protect your customers from the potential of the spread of the virus, okay, we can have a conversation about this. I can actually see that. Now that we have evidence that it does not have any reduction in potential spread of the COVID, then what are we doing this for? My staff is in incredible shape. And by the way, if some of my staff wants to get vaccinated, which quite a few of them have, fantastic, good. But those that don't, I'm not in the position as a business to tell them what to do with their personal health. I never should be in that position. And unfortunately, in California now, in certain cities, obviously in New York, they announced that they're going to be doing it mandatory. In Los Angeles, they announced that it's mandatory for businesses, not just for employees, but for the customers as well. Okay, well, what if half of my customers choose not to? Are you going to compensate me for the fact that I'm going to lose half of my business because half of my half of my members are not choosing to get vaccinated? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that the things that are being talked and passed that are not even thought through, which is shocking, considering, especially if we take California as one of the largest global economies as a state. It's quite ridiculous. So I definitely, in beginning of this year, I took on a fighting stance, which allowed us to come back stronger than ever before. And to add to that, the one benefit of the shutdown, which I can't believe I'm saying that, but the one benefit of the shutdown was it allowed me and some of the key personnel on the corporate level to slow down and focus on the things that we always talked about that we wanted to improve in the company, but we were busy. You're always busy to do these things, and that slowed us down. It brought us to a dead stop. So we said, hey, remember all these things that we talked about that we wanted to change, implement, rebranding, some of the kind of basic operational changes that we wanted to make in the company. We did exactly that. So we really focused. We still worked really hard while we were shut down. And that allowed us to really set the brand for this kind of mass expansion that we're planning on. And I'm glad that in 2020, we did not expand when we had the plans to, because we were not nearly as ready as we are today. Again, that's the only kind of a fortunate benefit of this shutdown, but that's probably the only one that I can mention.
TBC to me looks like something completely worth fighting for, and talking to you now, it really is apparent that it's not just a business for you, right? Like it's your life. It's your life's work. It's your life's best work. It's something that really means a lot to you because of the people that you empower through it. Now, a lot of people sort of talk about family vibe, culture, and it's almost like a buzzword, but I see you guys really living it. I see you guys getting out into the community. You've got innovative ways to, be seen. And some of them are not necessarily like, money at the front door. It's more long-term sort of positioning and being really part of the fabric of San Diego. And that's something that's really quite unique to the boxing club. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Family culture, it's a very kind of overused term in just corporate America, especially. Because corporate America recognizing that that's actually something that is very important. Now, the difference is a perception of family values or culture, and then the actual thing. I think that's the big difference. But we see it in the fitness industry now, and I think we'll use some of the United States brand as an example. You have big box brands like 24 Hour Fitness, LA Fitness, and so on and so forth. Massive box gyms that have thousands of members. Even they are recognizing now that they have incredibly high churn rates because that piece is missing. And I mean, arguably we are living in a time where we have the most educated customers, the most educated consumer, because everything is just on the palm of their hand. They can do full research of the brands, top brands that are, let's say, for fitness. And from the start, I believed in that kind of family vibe and the culture back when I took the company over, because I realized that this is the important piece that is missing in quite a few clubs. And also there's a fine line to walk, because that can be also become a very toxic environment as well. If it becomes, if I'll use a fight gym as an example, and it's a very cliquey environment, it can become very toxic as well. So there's a fine line that you have to walk of professionalism, but at the same time, kind of keeping that family feel. The fundamentals, the basics for any gym is knowing your customers by name, not just knowing them by name, but potentially knowing some of their family members, how their kids are doing, just basic interests or kind of where they're working, having genuine conversations, being very helpful. So I think these are all the things that I think the Boxing Club has done successfully, and we continue honing on on these elements. I think that's been really successful for us.
I love that. Thank you so much. I really like that, knowing people by name, having a little bit of interest, taking a bit of interest in their lives, because I see the ones that work really, really well, the brands that go from, okay, somebody has a job, they maybe go to the office, maybe things are getting a bit more flexible now because of the pandemic, but somebody has a job and they have a home. And who are you to them between that home and that job, right? And if you can be that, and I see that's something that you guys are doing. You guys are doing it so well.
Yeah, so the Boxing Club really became kind of part of your daily life, right? So we're arguably a more premium gym. So meaning, we're charging roughly around $150 a month, which, by the way, I mean, there's combat studios that are charging significantly more than that. But by comparison to your typical big box gym where it's 40, 30, even down to $20 a month, it's still a more premium offering. But we're not a gym. We're part of your daily routine. We have members that are coming in for a class in the morning, class in the evening. They're going to our social events, which we do obnoxious amount of, anything from yoga and mimosas down to Muay Thai sparring, and then some drinks at a bar. We really, really kind of encompass your whole life. And that's why members stay with us for such a long time. It's not, again, a big box model to where they hope that you stay for 3 months and stop coming and continue paying bills. We hope that you stay on long term and continue coming in and taking our classes and learning the combat sports. I think that's what it's all about. It's in combat sports, especially for what we do, it's not very common to do it on the scale that we're doing, but then still keeping that authenticity. I think it's a difficult task.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, after the pandemic, did you notice a sharp increase of people wanting to sign on and be, part of the Boxing Club?
Yeah, we broke every record. So, and that just tells you that we're listening to our customers, right? So in 2020, of course, they took a massive hit from the shutdowns down to even when we reopened. There's still a lot of fear, but the fact that we as a company, we're reopening and we're breaking every record possible, it just tells you the consumer behavior, that they're no longer fearful of a potential of getting COVID by going to a fitness class, which, by the way, is practically none since the shutdown back in March down to today. We still don't have a single case to where it was linked to the fact that the person came into the Boxing Club and they ended up getting COVID. Generally, every time we hear the same story. I went to a house party and there's a lot of people there, and staff member or member, they ended up catching COVID. So that consumer behavior shifted, and we predicted that. I did a podcast a while back ago, I believe in December, and I talked about this. I said, watch, summer of 2021 is going to be absolutely wild when it comes to nightlife, bars, restaurants, and fitness industry, especially if you positioned your brand well and did the marketing right. The people care more than ever about their physical shape. So I think if you can play the cards right, you see that. And of course, now we see the slowdown again with the fear-mongering news of Delta variances. I don't know how many variances there are now. I lost track. But every time they're trying to scare you with the new variants and this and that and the other, and then we see the slowdown. But again, eventually people will have enough, and they'll say, "Hey, I'm going to the gym." Whether it's with a mask or not mask, whether it's vaccinated or not vaccinated, I'm going to the gym. So I think that's kind of what we witnessed here, at the very least here in California. But talking to some of my friends nationally here in the United States, seems to be the pattern.
I mean, you've got some championship goals, and I mean, being a fighter, you've always been adaptable. That's something that I noticed that you've done. Whatever challenges got thrown at you, you got that fight IQ. You're quick, you adapt, you adjust, you make the moves, and you've got big goals, right? Are you able to elaborate on some of those at all? Like, are we talking hybrid models? When we look around and we're seeing F45 IPOing and Peloton doing so well and this sort of hybrid style of thing, are you looking towards that? Can you talk about anything like that?
Yeah. We saw last year that in the fitness industry quite shifted. Gyms are closed, so we have a huge boom in digital fitness, and you have so many wide range of offerings, anything from mere acquisition by Lululemon down to kind of what you're mentioning, Peloton. And I get asked a lot by some of my friends and potential investors if boutique fitness and just in general brick and mortar gyms are kind of a history, and now it's all going to shift to digital. And the answer is no. We're social creatures, and we see it now with what's happening with Peloton and some of the other digital offerings. That when that was the only option, of course they were booming. But now that brick and mortar is back open here in the United States, it's shifting, and we're social creatures, so people are still going to be always attracted to going and seeing people in person and socializing. We talked about this just a few minutes ago, that it's not just fitness, it's the social aspect. It's part of belonging to something more than just some gym. You're part of the club, the boxing club, and I think that's the difference. So I don't think that digital is going to be kind of the future. Will it be here to stay? Of course. Are there hybrid models right now? Absolutely. So what you're mentioning now, you have a number of studio boutiques that are implementing technology. They're implementing technology for one basic reason: employment. You are saving in costs of employees by having an iPad run you through the workout, and then you have minimal staff to just kind of oversee, making sure you're not breaking your back in half. I understand that. I understand that business model. That is not the boxing club. And in fact, that would not be my suggestion for any combat sports. In fact, I would double down and do the quite opposite. I would double down and say, hey, we are a gym where it's a real human interaction and minimal digital distraction. I think that's in the world where we're surrounded by digital. I think it's really, really important to, especially for combat sports, to keep that level of authenticity. Because arguably, if you're bringing technology into your gym, eventually there will be technology that your members, your potential members, don't even have to go to the gym, and some competitor is just going to have a better technology that is going to take your customers.
I love
so
that.
doubling down on authenticity is what the boxing club done. So instructional classes cannot be taught on an iPad. I'm sorry, you can't teach Muay Thai, you can't teach boxing, you can't teach jiu-jitsu or MMA on an iPad. Can you run some fitness classes? Sure. So I think that's kind of my short answer or long answer, I should say, for specifically combat sports. I think combat sports are here to stay. I think it's going to continue booming. We're riding an incredible wave of how hot boxing has become, and every teenager kid wants to be next Logan Paul, and they want to box, and I welcome that, because if it opens up to the masses, and again, we're still offering authentic workout. It's not as some gyms call it, it's a boxing inspired workout. It's not boxing inspired, it's actual boxing, it's actual jiu-jitsu, it's actual Muay Thai. So I think that's kind of what made us successful, and that's what is going to allow us to continue scaling. However, it's a very complicated model to run, as I mentioned to you, and that's why we don't see too much success with franchising this model out. Franchising means you're scaling at a very fast pace, and you're potentially selling this model to a franchisee. if I'm a franchisee with zero experience in combat sports, how would I possibly know who is a good boxing coach and who is not, who is a good Muay Thai coach and who is not, especially if, again, if you're offering authentic combat sports. So we have not seen any success there. Maybe arguably LA Boxing, which they sold successfully to UFC Gym, but let's see what's happening with UFC Gym now. UFC Gym had a horrible track record of closing multiple locations nationwide and actually globally as well. And they're just writing the UFC name. They're franchising at a very fast pace, but again, they're quickly realizing that it's not easy to find combat sports practitioners. They're not sitting on LinkedIn applying for job positions. So, and there's no like a globally or nationally accredited certification for any of these sports. So you have to have intricate understanding and intricate network of people that are going to help you find these coaches. And again, that's what allowed the boxing club to be successful. And I think that's our model to continue scaling. But it's not an easy replicable model. So which is why I don't think we're going to ever franchise. It's going to be more of a company owned concept that we're going to be running. And in fact, that's how we developed our mission. Our mission is basically to provide full-time job opportunities to current athletes or retiring combat sports practitioners. It does not exist in the United States right now. If you dedicated your whole life towards a combat sport, let's use a Muay Thai as an example, and you want to continue teaching, you're probably teaching at multiple locations, different brands, and probably bartending on the weekend on top of that to make ends meet. Or you're doing it as a hobby and you have your full-time job. It's not a full-time job offering. So at the Boxing Club, we're really positioning our brand to where there are benefits. There is a retirement plan. There is an insurance. There is a long-term career opportunity to where if you dedicate your whole life towards a particular sport, you can stay with the company and do it for as long as you wish and pass on your knowledge.
And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's something that I really concern myself with right now, is that making sure that these combat gyms, these 50-year-old, 30-year-old gyms in New Zealand and Australia and abroad, that just, because if they shut, that knowledge gets lost. It gets truncated. It's not getting passed on. And that really scares me. And I think a lot of the gym owners, they're amazing at teaching, when they're in front of people, but they don't necessarily have the business or the marketing skills in order to be able to articulate their value and translate that like in a digital medium, which is still just word of mouth, right? It's just scaled. It hasn't really changed.
I think even if you don't have a huge marketing budget, you're absolutely right. I think tapping into the network of people, your members already are your biggest fans, and having a genuine conversation. I mean, during COVID, we emailed our members, all of our members, and we said, hey, guys, we're shut down. If you choose to continue paying your dues, we will pay you back later. Because we didn't know at that point, we didn't know if there's going to be federal support. We didn't know how long this shutdown is going to last. So coming up with these unique, different kind of angles and fighting through, quite literally, I think is the key right now. Negotiating with your landlords, talking to your members, tapping into your member network, seeing if there's potentially an investor. If you had a member for a number of years and they happen to have a successful business that maybe was actually thriving during COVID because it's digital, maybe they're interested in investing and helping you preserve the brand and be a part of it to hopefully when the restrictions are lifted, you guys can build the company back up and make it thriving. So there's cool, unique offerings and opportunities that can be done. And obviously social media is the biggest one. I mean, it's right there. It's free. You do have to be creative. And if you're not, then you want to find someone in your inner circle that is creative to tap into that.
I love it. I love that. And I mean, you talked about scaling and how difficult it is. You've already done it. You've scaled from one location to now two in your area in the Bay Area. You're obviously looking to partner in the future, and tap into other locations. Say, for example, someone's in Sydney listening right now or in Auckland listening right now. From your position, Artem, what would the attributes be that you would be looking for in a partner if you were wanting to bring the Boxing Club brand to a couple of these locations?
I don't think we're going to be ready anytime soon, but let's say hypothetically if that time came, again, it would have to be someone that believes in the brand and understands what the brand is all about, and probably has some sort of combat sports background that has that understanding. I think that's going to be important. But I think first and foremost, right now, our goal is to continue growing the company that we have here in San Diego. We're looking to expand into other markets in California and outside, which is going to be very first for our company. But we're very cautious about expanding because we want to make sure that we preserve that quality of the product. Again, if we're saying that we have some of the best coaches and combat practitioners for our customers, we want to make sure we deliver on that. So we don't want to rush and expand too rapidly. There's quite a few companies that made that mistake and potentially sabotage the brand. And more importantly, again, our mission is to help our coaches, and we would never want to put our company in a position to where we're jeopardizing that. So I think that's really important to us.
I love it. I love that. So what are you fighting for, Artem? I always ask this. I need to know.
I'm fighting. I get asked that a lot. I think the biggest driver for me is creating something that's not been done before, leaving something behind. Again, I think we're doing a very unique thing here, and I'd like for the boxing club to be a global brand. And anytime people think combat sports on a mass scale, they think of the boxing club as the place.
That's a really, really, really good answer, man. I like that. So how do we stay in touch with you, mate? Like, what are the handles should we throw out there? What's the go?
So the handle for the boxing club, it's at the BXNG Club. And my handle is my first name, ARTEM, and then good luck with my last name. I'll let you guys look it up. Don't even try. Just call me Artem. But that's the handle. You guys can find us. Our social media team is doing a fantastic job of sharing some of the different activations that we're doing in our club. If you see something that you like and you want to implement at your club, I welcome it. If you have any questions or you have some ideas that you want to run by me, slip into my DMs. I'm happy to answer it as much as I can. I'm happy to help anybody who is dealing with this crazy times and obviously passionate about combat sports and fitness. We really want to make sure that as many people as possible bounce back from this and build their teams, build their culture and their clubs.
The best, man. As I said at the beginning of this, I really, really, really appreciate you taking the time
Thank you so much
to share your knowledge, and your story's been really, really inspirational. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All good, my bro. You take care.
Take care, everyone.